2 Heineken, please.
Let's get back together. Heineken sporting the LVA and the VFI. Here's to fresh beginnings. Enjoy Heineken responsibly. Visit drinkaware.ie.
Refresh for success with a free or 90% funded short course at Griffith College. Choose from certificate courses in web, interaction and UX design and more. Don't wait another year. Apply today at griffith.ie. Courses are co-funded by the Government of Ireland via the Higher Education Authority under the July stimulus provision.
Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions.
Now, very happy to say Ronan O'Gara joins us on the line. Evening.
Hi Joe, how are you?
Yeah, very well. So sum up that Lions series for us.
Oh, there's a question. Sum it up. It was, I would say, a missed opportunity for the Lions in the fact with a nip and tuck game in the first test and managing to get over the line, and then Springboks out of form for probably the first 40 minutes in the second test and hanging in there, and then comprehensively turning it around and finding form. And I suppose the third opportunity being the Lions so dominant for the first 40 minutes of the third test but not closing the door, and great teams find a way to win. And I carefully chose great, I suppose, because they are the world champions and they are now the victors of the Lions series, and there's a reason they do that, because you have to have a lot of components and ingredients to be able to achieve what they did with an incredible lack of game time.
What did you make of the rugby we saw?
Very average, very disappointing. But there's mitigating factors for that, in the fact that at the highest level, it's especially, I suppose, I think people don't give South Africa enough credit because they play their way and that's the way that works. And why would you change when you win a World Cup and you've won a Lions test series now? But I think when you see the tempo Finn Russell added when he came on, you have to say if the Lions played off 10 an awful lot more, I think the result would have been different.
Is that the big charge here against Scotland, or what was the mistake or mistakes that he will rue the most when he's thinking about this now?
I think I coach, I understand everyone makes mistakes and that's what happens, but I don't think we've ever seen an Alliance tour, Joe, before such uncertainty over a test team. I don't think anyone would have picked anywhere near the same team. I don't think many people would have left certain players at home, like Johnny May maybe, or Billy Vunipola, depending on how you want to play the game. So I think there was huge uncertainty in the fact that I think everyone agreed on Furlong, Itoje, Curry. You couldn't really say you could be convinced with 9 and 10. And in the back line, I would have thought Liam Williams would have been a certain test starter, but he came on the test, but he featured in test 3.
You said an interesting thing there, the way you want to play the game. You pick the players according to the way you want to play the game. Can you explain to me, how did the Lions want to play the game? Because I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I think they wanted to play the game with contestable kicking, putting pressure on South Africa and playing the game in their half of the pitch. But it looked, I understand that the Lions had grievances about South Africa slowing down the pace of the game, but I think that's a mindset. I think it's something that everyone has to buy in for, and I think you have to start it from the kick-off, because even though the ball and play time for the third test was a record low of 25 minutes, which you'd have to question that data. That seems inaccurately low. But the phase game was probably the area where, on good pitches, on good conditions to pass the ball, that wasn't very evident. There was no real I suppose, consistent picture of the same shape, but then you see why that didn't happen, because I think for every game on tour there was a different centre combination.
Like, there's no way they could have sat down after the Six Nations and said, let's build towards Elliot Daly playing at centre for us against South Africa. There's no way that could have, that they were working towards that. It never felt like they were working towards some kind of game plan or vision they had set out before the tour at all.
There's obviously incredibly competent coaches that have to have a vision about how they want to play. I find that surprising, a bit like you, in the fact that if Elliot Daly has played one game in the last 5 years at 13, you have to probably ask why. But maybe they were loading their team with Hogg at 15 and Daly at 13 to kick, and that's what we saw. But there's comes a times when you've got to keep ball and you've got to move them, and you could see the opportunities when Russell came on. That with that little bit more of fatigue over essentially 170 minutes more, could have been a very different picture we were watching.
It's amazing, with Russell, he has, I think mainly there are detractors, I think, in the main. You have always been one of the few that really kind of spoke up for him, I felt, over the last number of years. Saturday will go down as like a major moment in his career where he, really stood up and showed people what he could do against very, very difficult opposition, in fairness to him.
Yeah, exactly. But there's still a question mark in the fact that, and I have huge time for him, I admire the way he plays and I really admire his mentality. But I suppose if I was the coach too, I don't think you can load your team for Finn Russell every week, because the goal kicking is unproven, Joe. You need a goal kicker at 90%, 80%, usually in test games. So for me, it was a perfect afternoon for Russell. And why do I say that? Because he kicked unbelievably well off the tee, which doesn't happen every week. We have to be realistic about this and call it the way it happened. But it was a going day for him, and when he's a going day, he is very unplayable. But the fact is that doesn't happen every Saturday, and happens less in test games. But in the last 18 months, I think there's been a massive turnaround. I think his game management in Paris was exemplary, and I think that gave him a lot of confidence. And I think the speed of ball through his hands and his quality to rip a pass is superior to the other 10 that were on the tour by a distance.
Yeah. Sort of a bigger picture question, because I know you love the Lions, and you were, it was a huge ambition of yours to get on the Lions team, and you'd love to see the concept continue. I think the Lions brand really took a bit of a beating here over the last couple of weeks with the way they tried to play. And I think another series or two like this will have the Lions in big trouble. For me as a spectator, and I know for you guys involved, the most important thing is to win. But for me as a spectator, to get behind the Lions and to get interested in the Lions, the appeal for me is not so much the winning. Because, any individual country can go down to the Southern Hemisphere now and win. The appeal for me as a Lions fan is you have the best of the best coming together, and the exciting part is to see what can the best of the best do next to each other. How can they combine? What kind of rugby can they play? So for me, I don't have huge interest, I would have to say, in watching the Lions go down again in 4 years' time and 4 years after that to box kick off the ball and contest balls in the air and have one-off runners. I think if the Lions is going to continue and still attract the interest, they can't put too many more series like the one they've just put in going forward. They're going to have to try and play rugby and excite people, because like the last 3 tests, I'm not looking forward to 4 years' time the way I was, say, after 09. Even though they lost 09, I thought, my God, this was just great rugby and brilliant players trying things together. So I don't know your thoughts on that as somebody who follows the game so closely and loves the Lions, about the brand and what they're meant to do and represent.
I would agree with everything you say there, and I think there's a lot in what you said, and it was such an unremarkable tour in the fact that very little happened on the pitch for the first 2 tests. All the drama was for the wrong reasons off the pitch, where there was the infamous Razzie rant, which was against everything in the values of the game. And then the third game was good, but I agree the responsibility is with the Lions, I think, in the fact that they nearly are in a win-win scenario, and because if you play a certain way and you win the series, you're heroes. But imagine if you were to win the series with I don't know, it's brave the right word, but an all-round game with changing the points of attack, reading the situation, trusting your instincts, having a goal, because, as you say, you're backing the best players in Britain and Ireland to perform for 80 minutes, having been essentially thrown together. I would agree in the fact that if people have to stick through 3 tests like that again, the game will lose a lot of supporters, viewers. Maybe not supporters, but viewers.
Yeah, and certainly the Lions, because I don't know, they're somewhere between the Babas and a proper test team, but they are in a higher plane. And when I think of the Lions over the last number of years, like I said, I think of that 09 tour. The 01 tour, even though they lost again, was a great tour. I don't remember 97 as much. Even some of the tries they scored in New Zealand 4 years ago. That's why I was so excited for this tour, basically because the way they went about their business in New Zealand. And look, I know South Africa is always a more turgid affair, but I don't know, just the lack of ambition this time around. If we get that in 4 years' time and 4 years after that, I think the Lions will be in big trouble.
Yeah, there's a message in it too, though, that you only win test games by scoring tries.
Yes.
Driving mauls tries aren't good enough.
Yeah.
No matter how good you're kicking games. And people will say, well, South Africa didn't win by much, but they won. And when you win playing like that, you get all the credit. But I think you could imagine winning the World Cup and losing one test and having the reactions that South Africans had because of the way, I suppose, when you lose in the manner when you play kind of crash ball forward, one out, kick in the air, and you don't get the result, I find you get players disgruntled very quickly. Winning is everything at the top level, and once you win, everything goes. But if you don't get the result, the mood in the camp and the disillusionment becomes very evident very quickly. So
do you suspect, and there's no way of knowing I'm sure, but do you suspect there were probably a few members of that Lions squad sort of with their arms crossed thinking this is not really why I'm giving up 6, 7, 8 weeks of my life to come down here and play this?
Yeah, I would think so, because I think deep down they know that you rarely get that opportunity, and as shallow as it was, or with the lack of crowds and atmosphere, there was still a test series to be won, which they'd have for the rest of their lives, and that's what competitors want. And at that level, because you're playing with guys that you know well, but not that well for a long time, it's a very personal moment that you share with them for the rest of your life. But the other side of it, when you don't perform, you can go back into your club and your country setup and say, okay, I'm going to get on with this. Yeah. But it's such a special moment if you were to get over the line.
I guess something which, to be fair, didn't help the Lions, and you referenced it, was even the ball in play time, which we're being told was 26 minutes. An average Six Nations match, the ball's in play for 38 minutes. At the World Cup it was 35, so it seems it was down to 26, which probably didn't help the Lions. But the state of the game, if that was a big advertisement for sort of the floating voter who might have tuned in because it's a big occasion and let's see what rugby has to offer. Your thoughts on rugby at the moment, where TMO conversations are going on for 17 minutes a game, scrum resets seem to take forever. It's so stop-start. It's not a sport at the moment, Ronan, as a viewer you can kind of lose yourself in. You don't get 15, 20 minutes which whiz by at the moment, I feel.
In the Lions test series, I think that's obviously the latest image that it stays in our head because it's the latest viewing. But I think the new format of the Champions Cup shows some cracking rugby.
Yeah.
High scoring, ambition, adventure, even though it was knockout. But and I understand that's a club game, but at the test level, when you're, I suppose, suffocated by pressure and outcome dependent, you could see that the game plan was very, very risk averse. Yeah,
and I guess that's human nature as well, to be fair. Is there anything the lawmakers could do to speed things up?
Speak to Scott Robertson, he'd have a complete different outlook at it. he'd have a different vision about how these games should be approached. But to do that, you got to set up people to succeed, and you got to make a plan in terms of how you want to do it and how you show them that you'll break down the opposition. So the Lions obviously thought the best way to break down South Africa was aerial bombardment, but I thought that was a position of huge strength for South Africa. And I'm still convinced by the last 70 minutes, by repetitive tempo, by pushing South African, especially their front row and their front row reserves, to a position where they are very stressed and fatigued in defensive decisions, you can get that penalty that can either result in kicking to the corner to your line out to launch your game, or to quickly go, or to keep the ball in play and play a phase game. But to do that, you need to get outside their rush defence. That's the big difference. New Zealand and Australia will always give you the outside with ball in hand. South Africa will never do that, because you have to do it with a kicking game.
So you don't think, all the TMO conversations and the delays, generally in rugby, if we park these three tests for a second and just talk more generally, you don't feel the game's in a spot of bother in that respect, do you?
Yeah, I do, because I think what we need now is probably a set of rules that is understood by everyone and that's refereed for a period of time. So whether that be 36 months, 24 months, but from my point of view, in the last 5 years, I think there's been different rules introduced, taken away, and it's hard to understand, do they still exist? Are we playing this rule? Are we playing this rule? The interpretation, for example, around the tackle, around the ruck, there are a lot of grey areas that need constant revision.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can. One of the issues around the breakdown is, and Razi's video exposed it really, is you can have 10 different interpretations around the breakdown for starters.
Yeah, you can, but then if there are games that give you hope in the fact when you see, I suppose, people identifying space and playing at pace, like what Japan played, they don't have many issues around the breakdown because they're effective at what they do. It's, I suppose, when teams fail to understand the interpretation of the referee, that's when, I suppose, grey areas come in.
Yeah. Of the Irish contingent, who caught your eye? Who comes home feeling good about the tour and how they played?
I think a lot of them, because so many of them played in the test games. I thought Robbie Henshaw was consistently excellent, and he's been doing that for a long time, and to do it in a Lions jersey at the highest level against, that was probably the two best players were probably in 12. Diolande was exceptional. I thought he was probably the player of the series. Itoje was good at times. Robbie Henshaw was good at times, and obviously Tyke Furlong was very good. Jack Conan had a fantastic tour. I thought there'd be other guys would be a little bit disappointed, but they still contributed.
So that's interesting. Diolande, player of the series. What was so good about him? I
admire him doing the simple things well over and over. I think his decision making, when to pass, when to carry, when to chop, when to hold up, when to call it from Pollard. I admire his work rate.
Yeah. Very good. Well, listen, our time is coming to a close. Are you back in pre-season?
Yes.
You are?
Yeah, we kind of had guys who didn't play a lot last year in last week to get the legs going, and this week full squad bar kind of the guys restricted from or compulsory rest from touring, summer tours. Okay,
very good. So you have them running up hills and getting sick afterwards and all that stuff, do you?
No, none of that yet, because it won't happen. We play Toulouse in 4 weeks' time, so I think less is more at the minute, Joe.
Right, okay. And are you refreshed and ready to go?
I am, yeah. Looking forward to it. The sun is shining on La Rochelle. It's beautiful.
Good man. Okay, well listen, I'm sure we'll talk to you about that in due course. We'll let you go. Ronan, thanks very much.
Cheers,
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Ronan O'Gara there, and our Lions coverage is brought to you in association with Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions. In the next hour, we'll be talking to Billy Walsh, obviously head coach of Team USA in the boxing.
Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, lead partner of the British and Irish Lions.
Show me the science.
Proudly sponsored by B. Braun.
With Professor Luke O'Neill.